for those of you who don't know, when Devin first decided that they were moving here, he did, I want to say, was very transparent to the elders that he held quite a few gospel meetings every year. And so with that, I don't think we know his schedule next year necessarily, but if you are interested in teaching an adult class, doing a sermon, anything like that, or even doing like an invitation for that matter, please make sure that you let either him know or one of us know. We're always looking for subs for that. So he just kind of has who's willing. And I think when he first started this last year, he kind of asked several people if they'd be willing to do sermons or fill in for him when he's gone. So if you are interested in that, please don't feel like it's a secret club or anything. We'll actually recruit you if you don't say something. So that was for the men too. Didn't mean to make that open invitation to all the females as well. Norma was looking at me really interested in doing a sermon. Just kidding. So we'll get into it. We started with chapter 6 last week, talking about, I would say, kind of all-encompassing this desire for the love of money. Love of money, verse 10, is the root of all kinds of evil. And we talked about that a lot on Sunday. And so Paul was warning here to Timothy this desire not to want to be too rich. The danger obviously wasn't the money itself. It was this desire, this love of it, the pursuit of money, and really the distraction is what we'll kind of talk about tonight, the distraction of money. And so tonight in verses 17, we're going to be, my actual section here has a little footnote here. It says, instructions to the rich. And so tonight we're going to be talking about these instructions to the rich. I like to play this game with the employees that we hire. A lot of times employees will be with us. We have some employees that have been with us for 14 years, 9 years, so pretty long time. And I like to play this game with employees when they first start and say, like, how much would you like to make here one day, type of deal. Someone will say $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, $100,000 a year someday. And so they'll tell me these deals, and it's so funny because I will actually see people get to that point, and I'll ask them again, what would you like to make someday? And it will be a lot more than what it is. It's funny, and I'm not saying I'm any better, and you might have done that in your own life. And so tonight, I want you to think about something. I can't put an exact number on it, but it's just like do you remember when you were growing up and old people were a certain age to you? I remember like maybe mid-30s, it was an old person at one time, and now I'm mid-30s, and that's not old at all. Like I'm very young, I feel like, right? And some of you are laughing, you probably feel the same way. 50s isn't old anymore, 60s isn't old anymore, right? And somebody said something, old is 30 years older than you, and young is, it was like it's a sliding scale, right? And so when we're talking about these instructions to the rich, I think that a lot of people do the exact same thing. I think contentment, what I found with a lot of these employees, anytime you ask them, it's so weird, they will almost say double what they're making. What would you like to make someday? They'll say double what they're making. And you might think that in your own life. Man, if I could make, and you say double what you're making now, yeah, and a lot of people do that, I think. Sometimes 2 to 3 times what they're making. And I think a lot of people, rich people, are 4 times whatever your net worth is. Now, I'm not rich. It's this level is rich. No one, I don't think, says some of the richest people in the world, yes, I'm rich. But I don't think anybody in this room you say like, hey, he's pretty rich, right? You go, hey, I'm not rich. I think that everybody here would say that. But tonight, as we're talking about instructions to the rich, I don't want you to say, that's not me. And so I've pulled some statistics. In 2025, if you make $60,000 US per year, that places you in the top 1% of income earners in the world. That's pretty close to the average in Oklahoma. So $60,000 a year, household income places you in the top 1% in the world. So if you think about that, and I'm not saying I don't know anybody's finances in here, but a lot of people in Oklahoma even are top 1% in the world is what I'm getting at. And if you're not top 1%, you're top 2% probably, or you're top 3% in the entire world. So tonight, as we're talking about this instructions to the rich, I want you to think about us in the United States, in the environment that we're in that our economy and our environment that we are in a very, very lucky, fortunate place. And so these people that we're going to talk about, of maybe they lucked into it, maybe they just did a job well done. As Devin made the comment, the people that God doesn't want you to be intentionally rich, just there are people that will be accidentally rich, right? And that's kind of in jest. It's usually not on accident, but maybe you just work really hard and you were in a very good industry and something happened. But we are all in a very lucky place that we were born here, or we're in this environment and we're in the society. And so I challenge you, as we're about to start reading these instructions to the rich, that you not say like, that's not me. So I just wanted to say that before we dive into it. So let's read verses 17 through 19 of 1 Timothy, the 6th chapter. Verse 17 says, "Command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Let them do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life." So in this section, I think he's talking to, Devin has done such a great job talking about the city of Ephesus, how affluent it was and how much money was going through there, and how there was probably some people in this congregation that were very well off. And more than likely, there was a lot of people who were in a lot better place in this congregation than a lot of others. And how comparable that is to the United States. And yes, Oklahoma is not Manhattan. I understand that we're not Midland, Texas. I understand that we're not maybe San Francisco or some of the most affluent in the world, but we are in so much better of a place than so many others. And so, some of the takeaways in these verses: not to put your trust in wealth, not to find your security in your possessions. And what I think is the biggest warning for Timothy here, and so much that we can take away, not to be distracted by our wealth over godly things. Anybody have anything to add on verse 17 specifically? Or any of the thoughts? Jeff?
I think kind of relate that, not to go back to what Devin was talking about, but when we look up in verse 8, it says, "Having food and clothing, with these we shall be content." So everything that we have above our actual needs could be considered rich. And that desire, verse 9, those who desire to be rich, I think oftentimes we look at that and we try to say, oh, well, they're rich.
They should do this.
They need this.
Yeah.
They think that these instructions are to those who are already rich. When I would say it's very possible that some of the poorest people in our society can be guilty of this because of that desire that they have. Whether it's going out and spending all the money they do on lottery tickets or whatever it might be, but that desire for money is what can distract us as well. And then, of course, in 17, where he's talking to those who are rich. And I agree with you. I think we all, if you look at verse 8, we all fall into the category of rich.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. Anybody else? So what if this does happen? So like Jeff said, we should not have a desire. We should not be making that our aim in life, to be acquiring as much money as possible. But it might happen, right? You might be born into an affluent society like many of us are. You might be in a very good industry. You might have been blessed with a family that has a great business like I was. You might have so many different opportunities in your life that you don't know. Maybe you weren't in control of it, but hey, I'm here now. What do I do with it? Verse 17, don't trust in it. Don't let it distract you. Those are some of the instructions of that. But then verse 18, we get into a few more instructions. Verse 18 says, "Let them do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share." This idea really connects back to this. Remember, so many different times it talked about the brethren, it talked about the family of God, the household of God throughout this whole book. This really, it feels like it kind of connects back to this in a way that willing to share. It makes me think that perhaps we should think about our brethren first. We should think about the family of God first. It doesn't specifically say that, but it feels like that's been a theme throughout this whole book. And especially, remember what we were just talking about with the widows in chapter 5, where it was talking about the true widows and all the requirements that needed to happen for the church to take care of them, if they have a family, blah, blah, blah. Remember all those things? I think that, if possible, we should probably think of our spiritual family first. We should think about this household of God first, and willing to share those things that we have. I think that this is a first, don't put your trust in it, don't be distracted by it, but also be willing to share it with this family. Anybody else have a good thought on verse 18? Or I guess it doesn't have to be a good thought, bad thought, mediocre thought. Yeah, very true. I think it's so fitting, too, that he kind of ends the book with this. I actually was talking to Devin about this after he talked about chapter 5, that it's so often that I see people making almost a what do you call the argument? It's an emotional argument, I guess, for, you're telling me. I actually had a disagreement with somebody over the widows in chapter 5, that he was saying, this is crazy. Like, you can't take the Bible so literal. Like, you would never follow these exact things. And I was like, why not? And he was like, oh, you can't take that. So you would just let somebody be in destitute if they, and I was like, well, out of the church treasury is it one thing, but I said, why can't you take care of somebody personally if you have the means, obviously? And I think it's so interesting that he ends this chapter, or this letter, with this, that there are so many things that we can do to. All of that was to the church. We can take care of so many things personally too, if we live our life to not trusting in these things and doing all these things that he talks about, right? There's so many more things that we can do besides out of the church treasury, and it's such a shame that people are trying to shove everything through the funds of the church. We can do things without just the church treasury. Sheldon, were you going to say?
Yeah, I think too, we see a lot of times when it talks about this willingness to give, and it's talking, I think in this part of the context, to the rich person, the person who is already. But a lot of the things that I've observed so far is that some of the people that are the best at this actually don't have a lot. When you just look at their attitude toward the things that they have, or, and I think that goes back a little bit to that desire. And why the Bible talks about being rich as such a tempting position to be in, in so many different ways to sin, even sins of omission, of that kind of idea of all my money's tied up. It's like when we all do that, you get a raise, you do this and that, and you tie it up into investments or into other expenses. And, it's almost like those people that don't have the money that's coming in never even worry about it. Never even think about it. It's not distracting, and they do whatever they can for everybody else. I remember there was an older lady at church where I grew up that had the birthdays for every single person in the entire building.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Didn't have a lot. Not a wealthy family, not a wealthy person, and there wasn't a single person that had a birthday in the entire congregation that she didn't get a present for them. Whether it was something, it could have been
And I still remember it.
And you still remember it.
Yeah.
And those are people who don't have a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's such a tempting position to be in a society where they tell you, this is what you do with your money. Did you get a lot of it? Here's all the things that you have to do with it. And none of those things are typically very helpful to brethren or to other people. So
I think that's an attitude,
Yeah.
which it is a testament of the heart.
Yeah.
So, I think it's an attitude. It's just harder to have the more that you have sometimes.
Yeah. Very good. Misty and then Jeff.
There's that Bible verse, and I cannot, I don't remember what it is, but it's talking about when you're to be welcomed into heaven by those that you were benevolent to, welcoming you. And I was explaining this about.
It's in there, guys.
It is
Trust her.
in there. I promise.
Have to Google it.
I tried and it's not bringing up any.
Oh, okay.
It's one that I read a lot, but I can't find all of my other document anyway. But it talks about when you get to heaven, the people that you have been benevolent to recognize you and welcome you. When I find it, I will.
Okay, you speak back up. Jeff?
I was just gonna say, Paul, talked about this in 2 Corinthians, mainly in chapter 8, he was talking to the Corinthians and that they were giving for the saints in Jerusalem, in Judea, and he talked about the Macedonians gave out of their poverty.
Yeah.
So, people who Paul didn't even consider being rich.
Yeah.
So, it's that same thing. We all say it, I'm guilty of it. Man, I wish I had a lot of money, because if I did, I would do this, and I would be able to do that. And Devin kind of touched on that, but I think, what Paul's saying there, this is an example of that, and as Shelton mentioned. And then Paul says later in chapter 8, that mindset or idea of equality, that is something that goes totally against our society.
Mm-hmm.
It goes totally against our form of government. It goes totally against even what we often think of politically. But when you read it as Christians and as brethren, especially, and how we view our money, that anyone who had an abundance
Yep.
gave to those who didn't, where they had no abundance and they had no poverty.
Yeah.
And so if that's truly our attitude, and then we see how God blessed people in that, like he did Job.
Yeah.
And like he did,
Yeah.
Moses and Abraham. I think that's,
Yeah. Very good. Larry?
The scripture she's referring to, I think, is Luke 16, verse 9.
Okay.
Where it reads, "And I say to you, make friends for yourself by means of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwelling." Our goal is to be accepted as friends of people here on the earth by God and Christ.
Yeah. There you go, Misty. He bailed you out. All right. And Dallas?
I think the verse that comes to mind, what she's saying, what Chris was saying, is Revelations 14 and 13, where those that are in the Lord and they die, that their labors or their deeds follow with them, follow them into heaven. Not only are they doing it, but to their benefit, to those that they leave behind, like you guys are remembering this lady who gave gifts for birthdays, those type of things. People that exist on the earth will remember their deeds and the works that they did. So,
Yeah.
there's several accounts in the New Testament where, those people are remembered for what they've done. One woman who sewed up garments and stuff for people.
Yeah. Very good. Well, let's read the last two verses of the chapter. Verse 20 and 21. Somebody want to read that?
O Timothy, guard what was committed to your trust, avoiding the profane and idle babblings and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge. By professing it, some have strayed concerning the faith. Grace be with you. Amen.
So this whole chapter, he goes almost on the side tangent to talk about this idea of money, I guess you could say. And the last two verses cannot help himself but to talk about false teachers one more time. It has been such a common theme throughout this entire book, bringing out these people, talking about these people. Just can't help it. Guard what was committed to your trust, avoiding the profane and idle babblings. Just can't help it but slip it in there one more time in the very last deal. This idea of guard, does somebody else have a different, Timothy, mine says guard. There should be some other versions have different words there. Protect, trusted. What has been entrusted. Okay. So this word is actually a banking term. So it's like when you give money to someone and say, hold this for me, right? So this is a banking term to guard this, keep this, protect this, guard what I've trusted you with. It's someone that's been entrusted with a deposit to basically watch over it until you come back for it. It implies this watchfulness, responsibility. And so it's interesting that he used this word with the Scripture, with these things that he's told him. God has placed something valuable to you. Guard it. Guard this with your life. Watch over it. You have a responsibility over it. And that obviously goes to not only Timothy, not only to preachers, but that goes to every Christian, right? We have been entrusted with the faith, with the gospel, and we have to guard it. It reminds me of the song, Christ has no hands but our hands. Do you remember that? Just imagine if our goal, if our job, if our duty is to watch over the gospel and we let it slip because we don't say something when a false teacher comes in, or we let it slip because we're silent when we should speak, or we let it go because we're not studying it. We have been entrusted with something from God to keep it like a banker would keep something for us, to protect a deposit. It's God's deposit, and we're the keepers of it, is kind of the idea here. And so it's interesting that he goes back to this one last time to just say, hey, guard this, protect this, keep over this. Anybody have anything on 1 Timothy, the whole book? I can answer any question that maybe Devin, left fuzzy for you. I can clear anything up. Any hot topics, Larry?
A lot of this, most of it, he's talking about false teachers and the things that are happening with these false teachers. You go back over to Acts chapter 20 where he was talking to the elders at Ephesus. He told them at that time, he said that there were going to be ravenous wolves that come from among yourselves. In other words, that the elders, they were going to be leaders in that church. They were going to be doing this false teaching. And you can imagine how hard it would be for a preacher to go there and preach, and already some of the leadership is trying to lead people to who knows what. So
Yeah.
he did a good job telling him, and he did remind him a lot.
Yeah, he came back to it time and time again. Well, if you enjoyed 1 Timothy, I'll take all the credit for it. I finished the book up, so you feel free to give me the compliments and tell Devin that I did a great job covering 1 Timothy for everyone. Let's get into 2 Timothy. About halfway through the verses that we need to cover in the class. 2 Timothy, obviously, same author, same audience. The kind of the timeline here, if I should have put it like on the board, kind of the timeline here is 62 AD. Paul is released from prison. Roughly 62 to 64, he was traveling, and that's when he wrote 1 Timothy. 64 to 67, this guy Nero starts persecuting Christians, and it starts intensifying, and Paul gets caught up in that around 65 to 67. So just a handful of years have passed between these two books. So we're going to fast forward here just a few years. We went from book 1, Paul was traveling and writing to Timothy. Okay? A few years later, things do not look so good in the world. There's a guy in charge that's persecuting Christians. A few years have passed. He's not only this guy in charge, things aren't looking good, but Paul is in not just a guest house like he was some other times, and he's in a bad prison and probably not getting out. They think that this is where he was persecuted, was after this. And not only that, but some speculate that this is the last book that he ever wrote. And so this was right before. So the idea and the theme and kind of the emotion in this book, you can just kind of feel that it's going to be a little bit different because he was at a very different moment in his life in the first book. And you can see the difference here as we get into this book. There's a lot more, it seems like, kind of overarching motivational and overarching theme of like, you can do it. If we don't make it out, it's just a much different theme in this, where the other one was almost, it seemed like more tactical and more practical and more, these things were going on. And it seems like this one is just a little bit different. And when you know that that's probably what's going on, it makes a lot of sense. And so it makes you kind of respect this book and look at this book differently if you think about these are some of the last things that Paul might have ever said, especially in written form. So does anybody have anything to add besides that? Go ahead.
In my previous studies, the purpose of this was to charge Timothy in the first chapter to guard the gospel, second chapter suffer for the gospel, in the third chapter to continue in the gospel, and the last chapter four to proclaim the gospel, leading to the overall theme to fulfill his ministry.
It makes sense. It's kind of like a last will and testament, right? Hey, this is what you got to do. And you think about the relationship. Devin covered a lot their possible relationship, and he's at the end of his life. You kind of think about, this is the last things I'm kind of going to say to a loved one. And so it's kind of interesting as we get into this. It's almost emotional thinking, about sitting in jail, thinking like, I might get beheaded, or deheaded. I guess either works. And so, you kind of think about that. That makes some of these things he's about to say hit a little bit different. When he says, I thank God for you, or, some of the things we're about to read, he's really pouring his heart out. This isn't just a greetings and salutation. These are like, might not ever write to you again. It kind of makes it feel a little bit different. Well, let's get into it, verses 1 through 5 here. Does somebody want to start with that, verses 1 through 5? Perfect. Thank you so much. He's basically giving Timothy what better compliment could you give someone than, I pray for you night and day, greatly desiring to see you, being mindful of your tears, that I may be filled with joy. There's not a lot, you just think about, like, how could you tell someone, like, they mean so much to you? Some of these things that he's saying to him, and thinking about the situation that he's in, he cares a lot about Timothy. And I want to ask you, has someone ever made you a better Christian? Or maybe has someone made you want to be a Christian? Maybe someone taught you the gospel and made you want to be a Christian. I know there's several people that they encourage me so much because I know what they do maybe behind the scenes, or I know what they've stood for, or I know the things that they've done, or I know the amount of Bible studies that they have with people, or whatever it might be. Can you think of someone? Do people come to mind when you think of somebody like that? There was someone even like that for Paul. One of the most encouraging, one of the most, I would say, powerful Christians, whatever you want to call him, famous, whatever you want to put it on. There was someone that was even that for Paul. He was encouraged by him. He was motivated by him. And so, if even Paul could be encouraged by somebody else, can you encourage somebody else? Can you help somebody that needs encouraging? Can you make somebody a better Christian by the way you act, maybe by the things you say, by how you treat them, whatever it might be? We all need spiritual encouragement. And I think Paul is showing here how encouraging Timothy is to him. Anybody have anything else on those few verses? Okay, let's go to the last two verses here. Verses 6 and 7. Therefore I remind you to stir up the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. There's a lot that you could kind of cover in this, the different things that he says, the laying on of my hands. We kind of talked about that in the last book, what that might mean. That probably might mean that he had spiritual gifts. No need to speculate. There's a lot that we could cover. One thing that I wanted to kind of cover in this is that everyone needs motivation from time to time. He's kind of giving him like a little like prod here. Therefore, I remind you to stir up the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. Exactly what that means, I don't know. Whether that just means get after it, or whether that means actually do miraculous powers, or whatever it might be. But don't let your fire go out. He's telling him, don't shrink back. There is power in this. There's love. He's trying to encourage him, right? And so it kind of continues that sentiment that he talked about from those first several verses of, this is how encouraging you are to me. Now let me encourage you for just a minute. And so that's kind of how he starts the letter, it seems like to me, is giving him this encouragement. Everyone needs a little bit of motivation, it seems like. What do you have on that first 7 verses, Shelton?
So, when I look at this very first part, on top of everything that we've talked about, not only does Paul understand the situation that he himself is in, but Timothy knows the situation that Paul is in.
Yeah.
He knows that he's in prison this way. He knows that it's bad, and all of this thing. And Paul calls to his past, his foundation, to his grandmother and his mother and the faith that is in him, that is in them. And he says, I know that it is in you also to do this work, that I'm here and I'm suffering and I'm going to die for it, and it is worth it. And that, how encouraging would that be to know,
Yeah.
This man that I have followed, that I have looked up to, that's been a father in my faith, is telling me that even in these tough times, God did not give us a spirit of fear. He gave us a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind, that call to your remembrance the way that you were raised, the faith that you have, our relationship together, and you don't fear, the things that people can do to you or where this might lead you, but that we stay strong and God gives us power to keep doing what we need to do. And I think Timothy, knowing Paul is in prison, maybe about to die, would think those words would have to be pretty encouraging to say that.
It's just fascinating that if you got a list and said, like, give me a list of people in the New Testament that needed encouragement, you would probably put Paul, like, towards the last, But even he needed it. Even Timothy needed it. And it's interesting that they surely showed each other encouragement. But no one's exempt from needing so.
This was Paul's last thing towards Timothy, who he had been with for 12 to 14 years by now, and gone through quite a bit as he traveled around the known world spreading the gospel. Paul knew that his life, fixing to say, he poured it out like a drink offering. Well, that's the end of a sacrifice. The drink offering, basically. And he knows his life is coming to an end. He's already been through 1, if not 2 trials already. He knows he's dead. And so now he knows what's coming. He realizes what his destiny is coming, but he realizes there's going to be great persecution on Christians throughout all the world. And it's going to happen. We read that in Revelation. It's coming.
Yeah.
And Timothy's going to be one who's going to be a stalwart through all that, amongst others. And so he is encouraging Timothy for the battle and for the war that's going to happen, the spiritual battle that's going to happen a little while after he's dead. So it's really an encouragement to Timothy. Who is an encouragement to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Timothy is the closest thing that Paul had to a son. That's not a stretch for us to say that.
Sure.
Paul not being married, not having his own family. I mean, it was as if Timothy is his son. And so, I appreciate what you said about 2 Timothy, because as Paul's on his deathbed, so to speak,
Yeah.
what Timothy to know the most?
Yeah.
What is going to help Timothy when he's no longer here? And so, and we also see Paul in all of his epistles where he basically begs the brethren to pray for him and to encourage him.
Yeah.
And so, I just think it's real special, that relationship, because they were, equally important to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. I don't have Devin's fancy pen thing. I would embarrass myself just like he does with spelling and the way I write. But what takeaways do you have overall? What can we take from the last few verses we did of the 1 Timothy about the wealth and the kind of ending there to that book, and then maybe, or the beginning of this book? What takeaways do you have? One at a time.
Well, you guard the faith, and you hold on to that faith. I think he ends 1 Timothy that way. He starts 2 Timothy that way, under, like you said, completely different circumstances, but both are the same. You stay strong in the work and guard the faith. One, when we are successful and we're moving,
Yeah.
and two, when we're facing death because of
Yeah. Change books and
it doesn't change.
yeah. Very good. Somebody else? Jeff?
True riches come from God, and therefore, as he says, that it's a living God who gives us richly all things to enjoy. So, as we're seeking riches, we're seeking wealth, it's seeking that through God, spiritual blessings over our physical ones.
Yeah. Is that the first or the second bell? First bell. Okay.
I like the New American Standards version of verse 6, where it reminds you to kindle. You notice it doesn't say to rekindle it, but to start this fire. You think about to start this fire. And then you can continue to let it burn. Like the song we sing, if you're going to talk about songs, I will too. Like fire. Just keep that burning. Once you start that fire, it's going to catch on. And people are going to want to know how to keep that fire burning, not just because they want to stay warm, but because they want to keep that truth moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good. Anybody else? We got time for one more. Derek. Just kidding. All right. Here are 5. A little bit from each section. Don't trust in present riches and neglect being rich in good works and storing up treasure in heaven. Protect the faith. Some won't. Obviously, that can be internally, that can be externally, that can be false teachers here, it can be externally, fighting outside. Number 3, could others thank God for your faith? Number 4, even the most faithful and courageous need to be stirred up from time to time. He goes on in verse 5 through 7, which was Kelly's point that she was just making. And number 5 is kind of a takeaway. Can you stir up somebody? Can you make a phone call this week? Can you be the person that stirs up somebody this week? Maybe somebody that seems a little flat here lately. Maybe somebody that seems a little down. Maybe somebody you've been thinking about. Maybe they've been missing from time to time here lately, or they're going through a lot. The entire book of 1 Timothy, he made references to how it's a family of God, how it's a brethren, how it's your sisters, and kept making a reference to the spiritual family. That's what the entire letter of 1 Timothy was emphasizing, was a family. And so is there somebody you could call this week, somebody you could check on to truly try to encourage or stir up? Kind of tying both books together there, but I would challenge you to think about that this week, to do that this week, whether it's a text message, a call, whatever it might be, but to call and encourage somebody this week and stir up somebody. Anybody have anything to add on that? Devin's always presser time. I finished with 2 minutes to spare. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you so much. We're going to go through the next several verses here. We'll be going through 8 through 18 on Sunday. So if you want to read ahead and be prepared for a few comments for that, we would welcome that. We'll cover that on Sunday, and you're stuck with me again. So please show up. Thank you guys so much.